German Chancellor Angela Merkel comes to Washington this week, where she will receive at the hands of President Obama America's highest civilian honor, the Medal of Freedom. The President is a big admirer of the Chancellor and has publicly praised her leadership and Germany's central place in transatlantic relations. Yet the blue skies of the historically close German-American relationship has a few dark clouds on it this week. Chancellor Merkel abstained from supporting the UN resolution to use military force in Libya, a resolution that the U.S. strongly backed, and Germany has taken a tough line against nuclear power, another priority of President Obama's. So has German policy taken a new tack? Are German-American relations now sailing into a headwind? This is Sarwar Kashmeri, and my guest on the New Atlanticist podcast series this week is Annette Heuser, director of the American arm of Germany's Bertelsmann Foundation. As a German who lives in Washington, Ms. Heuser has a unique perspective on German-American relations, and I thought it timely to ask her opinion of the Chancellor's recent decisions. Here's my conversation with Annette Heuser. If you were to describe the messages coming out of Germany in the last couple of months, and if you were to describe how they are being read in Washington, what would you say?
Germany's performance when it comes to foreign policy here in the U.S. is perceived with a lot of irritation and not understanding really what's going on in Berlin. For many, many years, even during the dark days when the German Chancellor, at this time Gerhard Schröder, decided not to support the U.S. in Iraq, there was an understanding why German politics and its political leadership was in favor of a certain position. Today, after Germany abstained its vote on Libya, there is no understanding anymore at all what Germany's course in foreign politics is and how strong Germany's commitment is for the transatlantic alliance right now.
How much of Chancellor Merkel's position you think is internally driven as opposed to really being meaningful for the alliance?
I truly believe the sad story about German politics in these days is that 90% of it, at least, is driven by domestic politics. We've seen it over the abstention of the vote on Libya in the UN Security Council, that the upcoming election at this time in a specific region, Baden-Württemberg, which was very important for the Chancellor's party, the Christian Democratic Party, was giving the direction for foreign politics. And I think as much as we know that there's always a domestic component to any foreign policy decision that a leader of a country is making, as much as we know that this is a very dangerous course for foreign politics, because you need to be reliable when it comes to basic rules and commitments in your foreign policy course. And rightly so, our allies here in the United States have some question marks right now how strong Germany's commitment is for the transatlantic alliance in these days.
Let me play the devil's advocate. What if I were to say that Chancellor Merkel correctly read that no matter what the United Nations mandate was, that sooner or later the campaign in Libya would become one of regime change? And maybe she didn't think that that was the direction in which NATO and the alliance ought to be going. What would you say to that?
Even if the Chancellor had a lot of good reasons not to back the coalition on Libya, she could have done that also by voting with the transatlantic alliance in the Security Council and adding a protocol that is saying that, for instance, Germany will not engage, will get engaged military in the conflict in Libya. That would have been one option. And at the end of the day, if you have these kind of concerns, you better bring these concerns forward before such a very prestigious and important Security Council voting, and not in a way surprise your allies by abstaining your vote at such a very important voting.
Do you think that there is a way now going forward that the government in Germany can retract what it did or make up for it did or come back into synchronization again?
The damage is there with the abstention on the Libya vote when it comes to German foreign politics and its reputation here in Washington D.C. among the political establishment, I would say. And Germany can only make a positive impression right now by just standing shoulder to shoulder with the alliance when it comes to the tough decisions that need to be taken this summer on the future course in Afghanistan right now, on how to deal with the Pakistani leadership that seems to be very unreliable, not only for the U.S. but also for the European allies, and also when it comes to the question how to deal with Syria. I think Germany can play a major role in the future, being a kind of informal consultant for the U.S. when it comes to Syria, because there is no other European country that has such a long-term track record and informal channels open with Syria, not only with the political leadership, but also with a lot of opposition groups. And I think, therefore, it would be important to bring Germany back in the game.
Before too long, it will be necessary to rebuild the infrastructure and the damage that has been caused in Libya, and also to provide other assistance to get Libya back on its feet again. Do you think that the Europeans in general, and Germany in particular, ought to take the leadership in doing that and relieve the strain from the American budget?
There is no question that Libya has become more or less purely a European affair. And I would say rightly so, because the Americans cannot shoulder all the burden in foreign affairs in these days. They're heavily engaged still in Iraq and in Afghanistan. They are fighting two wars. A third war would be too much. All the European allies see that. So the lead is, when it comes to the military engagement, as we see it for now, in France and in the UK. But when it comes to development assistance, I think there is also a chance here for the European foreign and security policy to become more visible. Recently, the EU has opened a EU mission in Benghazi, at the capital of the Libyan rebels. Opening an office in Libya doesn't mean that you have a policy. I still want to see in the next week a clear kind of strategy coming out of Catherine Ashton, the High Commissioner and Foreign Policy representative of the European Union's office, when it comes to Libya. And therefore, it's also crystal clear that the EU has to shoulder the bulk of the development assistance for Libya in the years to come.
So if you were advising Americans to view what's coming out of Germany and analyze it more carefully than some of our headlines do, is there a bumper sticker message you would like to leave to Americans today?
Germany will have a problem with its foreign policy course until the next elections in 2012. Then we will most likely see a new coalition where the Green Party will be engaged more in the government because the Green Party is gaining a lot of political momentum right now. And then it is a time to come to a new kind of domestic consensus where German politics and policy needs to go. No question, Germany is still a committed ally in the European Union and in NATO, but it has to realize that with size and economic success comes responsibility. And this needs to be shown clearly after the next elections in September 2012.
You've been listening to a conversation with Annette Heuser for the Atlantic Council. This is Sarwar Kashmeri. Thank you for listening.